Pacers guard Malcolm Brogdon announced yesterday he has tested positive for the coronavirus, saying he's feeling well and is still planning on joining his teammates in Orlando for the NBA restart. And that is where we begin our show this morning with Jackie Mack, who was with us here. Great to see you, Jackie. I mean, I sort of looked at yesterday, the day, the deadline by which all these players would have to announce if they were going to skip the restart. And when you take everything into account, going through all that we've seen over the last several months and the build up to this the last few weeks, when you look at how few players have thus far said they're not going to go, it seems to me, if you're the NBA, you feel this has gone extremely well. What do you think?
Well, Greeny, I would agree with that part of it. There were less players than I anticipated deciding to opt out. But here's the flip side of it. So you mentioned that Malcolm Brogdon announced yesterday he tested positive for the coronavirus. I don't know how many players officially announced they've tested positive since this new testing began, but whatever the number is, Greeny, you need to multiply it by 2 or 5 or maybe even 10, because I think there are players testing positive all over the league as we start this new testing and just aren't revealing it to us. So that's just another new problem for the NBA, because this, as you know, this situation continues to be fluid because this virus continues to be fluid.
Realistically, that's of course 100% right, and will continue to be on into the future, well beyond, right. I would imagine. Every assumption is that this will go on well beyond when the NBA Finals are scheduled to end. So it's something they'll have to just continue to deal with as they go forward. But I keep thinking of something that Brian Windhorst told us earlier this week, that the NBA's plan at this point is, quote, too big to fail. What do you think of that?
Well, I agree with Brian, because I think what the NBA has done is taking every possible precaution. However, it's still such an unknown, Greeny. What if, and I don't want to jinx any superstar player, what if 2 of the top 5 players in the league end up testing positive in the conference finals and can't play in the finals? Will we then consider that a success? So that's a doomsday scenario for sure. But I am cautious because of the fluidity of this virus and how much we don't know about it. And I do think the NBA has done everything they can to make this bubble as safe as possible. But even the NBA and Michelle Roberts and everyone else has acknowledged there's no such thing as zero risk. And nobody is immune to this disease if you are exposed to it. Nobody.
Correct, of course. And so this is another example of this phrase that I've adopted, which is, in a pandemic, there are always more questions than there are answers. You just have to do the best you can. And so at least to this point, it feels like it's worked out, I think, as well as they could have hoped. Now, let me get you to Milwaukee here. Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks had the best record in the sport when the league went on pause, and they are still the favorites to come out of the Eastern Conference when play resumes. But the break might have come at exactly the right time for Milwaukee. You may recall Giannis injured his knee against the Lakers back on March 6th, just a few days before the league shut down. And the coach, Mike Budenholzer, thinks the time off might be a great thing. He said, quote, "It's a huge advantage for us that Giannis will be completely and totally healthy." He went on to say, "Who's to say how things would have gone if we kept on playing? I'm not sure it would be safe to say he would have missed a couple of weeks. Could it have been less? Maybe. Could it have been more? Perhaps. We can look back a bit and say, wow, I wonder what would have happened there." And so, Jackie, you interviewed the coach for that article on ESPN.com. What do you think of what he's saying there? This might have been a blessing. Well, I don't want to put it that way. This might wind up working out quite well for the Bucks.
I thought it was actually an interesting response, Greeny, and the question I had asked him was, did he feel disappointed because the Bucks had done such a great job of managing their core players' minutes? Think about this. They had no player on their team averaging more than 31 minutes a game. And that includes Giannis, who could be the MVP and the Defensive Player of the Year, compared to guys like James Harden, who are playing nearly 37 minutes. And that's when Bud gave me the quotes that you referenced. And I think he's right. I think what he was worried about, which is what all coaches are worried about with elite players, when they're injured, they want to come back. And Bud's concern was, because he knows Giannis, he would have tried to come back too soon before he was fully healed, and then it becomes a nagging thing all the way through. That problem now is eliminated because Giannis, like everybody else, has had time to rest and recover.
So a two-part question for those who've not followed your conversations all over the place. Were the Bucks your favorites when everything stopped down, and how has that been impacted by all of this?
So the Bucks were my favorites because of, for many reasons, starting and ending mostly with Giannis. But I will say that I think some of the advantages they had, Greeny, before this happened, have dissipated for some of the reasons I just said. The Lakers, to me, because of LeBron, because he's rested, because he's motivated, and because he has Anthony Davis by his side, to me now feel a little more like the favorites. Is that fair? I'm not sure it is. And hopefully Giannis and Bud and all the Bucks will have something to say about it and prove me wrong.
I'm going to get to some NFL stuff here in a minute, but I have a few more for you, Jackie, because I have been trying to figure out what I think, or which teams, which styles of teams might benefit the most from the time off. And I'm looking at the depth factor in all of this, and I'm looking at Boston in the Eastern Conference. They have I think I put the stats down on paper the other day. They have 8 guys, I think, who play double-digit minutes. They have 3 guys who average over 20 points a game. It feels to me like the Celtics are a team that in this compressed format might be very dangerous to Milwaukee in the East. What do you think?
Well, they certainly were going strong. Again, when the pandemic hit, Jason Tatum was on a tear, and he was starting to look like that top 5 player that so many of us forecasted he could be in the future. My only concern with Boston, and it's been true now for almost 2 years, is when they are good, they are very good. You can count on them. You can book it. They're going to be one of the top defensive teams and give other teams problems with their defensive schemes. The problem is on the other side of the ball, Greeny. When they go hot and cold, they live and die by the 3, and sometimes when they go cold, they go really, really cold. So I think they're just maybe one knockdown, for, hey, we'd all love Ray Allen or that kind of shooter, J.J. Redick, someone like that, from being a team that I could guarantee you was going to get to the finals, because they have these lapses offensively that really hurt them.
All right, Jackie, stay close. A little later in the program, we're going to talk about LeBron James and what he may or may not have at stake as we pick this thing up over the next few months, and we'll talk more about it then. Thanks so much for getting up early with us this morning. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.